Logan County, West Virginia, nestled on the western edge of the Appalachians. There is a rawness to the land here, its rugged contour shaped both by nature and by man. At the top of the hollow, 3 small forks come together to form Buffalo Creek. Mining was once the center stone of the communities here. If you weren't a miner, there was some way you lived off wages earned underground. Massive amounts of water are needed to clean the thousands of tons of coal mined daily, water that gets heavy and black with dust and residue. By the 1960s, coal companies are reusing the dark water, storing it behind walls of mine waste called slag. The middle fork of Buffalo Creek is the site of one of these giant slag heaps. The mining company calls it an impoundment. The locals call it a dam. The U.S. Geological Survey calls it dangerous. In 1967, the United States Geological Survey conducts tests on coal waste banks in southern West Virginia. Of the 38 tested, 30 are found to show signs of instability. 4 of them, including the slag pile above Buffalo Creek, are deemed hazardous. The survey is prompted by an incident that occurs the year before in a place called Aberfan. They say that when it rains, the land around Aberfan, Wales comes alive with the sound of chuckling water as tiny streams make their way down the Glamorgan Hills. In the mid-60s, like Buffalo Creek, coal mining is the heart of many Welsh villages like Aberfan.
Aberfan is a very, very small community, and it's always been everyone knows everyone, and children, the streets are always full of children.
Everybody was family in the valleys, in the Welsh valleys. You have your immediate family, but you've also got extended family. Everybody is aunts and uncles, and the back door was always open, kettle was always on.
On the mountain above Aberfan, 1,200 men worked the coal mine at Merthyr Vale. Every day, a huge heap of coal slag overlooking the village increases in size. October 21st, 1966. It has been raining for several days now, and this morning is no exception. At 7:30, the men who work the tip begin their long walk up the slope from town. Like all the other children in Aberfan, Gaynor Minot is getting ready for school.
It was Friday morning and we just couldn't wait to actually go to school that morning because we were breaking up for 1 week and we only had to go half a day that day. My brother, strangely enough that morning, didn't want to go to school. And my mother said, go to school now, it's your last day.
By 9 a.m., 8-year-old Gaynor, her 10-year-old sister Maryland, and 7-year-old brother Carl are at Pantglas School at the base of the mountain. At 9:15, the miners arrive at the tip. All they find is a huge crater. The massive wall of coal slag is gone.
It was just like this tremendous sound, like rumbling, like thunder, but thousands more stronger sound than that. Very, very frightening because no one knew where it was coming from.
Like thunder, it was coming from above as millions of tons of coal slag hurtled down the mountainside at more than 50 miles an hour.
And literally the school went absolute dead. You could hear a pin just drop on the floor because everyone was like glued to their seats. They just couldn't move. And I knew I had to run for the door because I knew something really bad was going to happen. But, you know, I never got to the door.
A black mountain of slag stands where there were once houses in the junior school. Inside, a mix of water and muck covers everything and everyone.
We were just all mingled and mangled all together, but we couldn't see where our legs and arms were because we were just covered up to there in muck and desks and chairs. So we didn't know who you were lying on. Or it could have been somebody lying in right underneath. You just don't know.
Gaynor Minot is buried waist deep in the rubble. Her hand caught tight in a crack in the wall.
And where my hand was, there was another child's arm from the next classroom hanging in to where I was. And I remember trying to pinch this and to see if that child, whatever, would move. Strangely enough, it was my brother's classroom, so it could have been him.
Gaynor is held fast with nowhere to go, surrounded by her classmates, her friends, who are now the dead and the dying. Beside her, there is a boy bleeding and a book called Through the Garden Gate.
And I just remember just reading it, sitting there, just reading this book and just watching everything going on. And I don't know why I'd done that, because it's not a normal thing I think you would do in those circumstances.
Outside, another school bus arrives with students from the senior school.
We started to walk up the hill towards the school, but we just couldn't understand where we were. Because normally you'd walk up the hill and the school would be there.
It's like if someone's just put a bomb on the school, you know, and just blown it all up. You know, the roof of the school was just basically on top of all the children. It caved in.
Townspeople try to dig their way through the dark slag. Bewildered fathers still in mining gear weep openly, knowing they stand on the bodies of sons and daughters. Distraught mothers claw with their bare hands, frantically trying to reach the children they sent to school not an hour before. The door to Gaynor's class is sealed, but a window is somehow undamaged. Rescuers begin the terrible job of bringing the bodies of children, alive and dead, one by one through the window. Gaynor's classmate Susan Robertson is pinned under her desk in the cold, wet darkness. When she hears a man's voice say, "There's no one here," she is able to poke a finger through the muck. It is all the rescuers can see, but it is enough. She is one of the last survivors to be pulled from the wreckage, and the picture of her being carried to safety is seen around the world. 144 people die that cold day in October. 5 are teachers. 116 are children.
And it wasn't until late that night that my parents came in, and I wanted to know where my brother and sister was. And I remember my mum, she just started to cry and walked out. And my dad sat there with me, and he just told me that they'd gone to heaven.
Even though I had been there and I had seen it, I still didn't believe it.
In a matter of seconds, Aberfan becomes a village virtually without children.
Most of the friends that we all bothered with, because we all lived next door to each other and all went to school together, they'd all died. But it was a few days after, when I realised what really did happen, that I did break down and cry.
The horror of Aberfan is felt around the world, even to the narrow valley of Buffalo Creek, West Virginia. But despite the warnings of the U.S. Geological Survey, prompted by the Aberfan tragedy, nothing is done to improve the dam of coal slag at the top of Buffalo Creek Hollow. By 1972, Aberfan is a dim memory. Life is good on Buffalo Creek. Most of the men are employed and people own their own houses. Many of those houses had been coal shacks once, but now, with renovations and hard work, they are homes to be proud of.
We had a close community. We had a ball field. We'd go down and, play ball and stuff like that, and just like regular teenagers would do.
Neighbors helped neighbors. Neighbors would talk over the fence to one another, sit on the porch, have coffee. And basically, we had a good life. I enjoyed it.
By 1972, the Buffalo Mining Company is dumping 1,000 tons of coal waste a day. By February, the largest slag heap on Buffalo Creek is 200 feet deep, 60 feet high, and 600 feet wide. Along with millions of tons of slag, it is made up of pieces of wood and metal refuse from the mines. Behind it sits 132 million gallons of thick black water. Below it, living in its dark shadow, are the string of communities that follow the creek, from Saunders at the top to the town of Man at its mouth 17 miles away. Communities that over 5,000 people call home. February 25, 1972, it has not stopped raining for 3 days. At the top of the hollow, mine officials are apprehensive. The rain and melting snow have raised water levels dramatically. They are being measured every 2 hours and are getting dangerously close to cresting. In the valley below, rumors of the dam breaking are buzzing from community to community.
Everybody cried wolf. I mean, you know, it's just like they tell you at one time it's going to break, and then, you know, you wouldn't believe them.
At the top of the hollow, the local mine boss sends a bulldozer to cut a drainage ditch across the surface of the barrier to relieve some of the pressure from the swollen Black Lake. As the bulldozer operator rounds the bend, he realizes that the dam is no longer there, and neither is the town of Saunders, the community just below the dam site.
There was a guy came down the road in a car hollering, "Run, the dam had broke, the dam had broke."
The dam collapses at 1 minute before 8, sending 132 million gallons of black water into the valley.
Just like a black, solid black wall of water. We was literally running for our life.
With the roar of a freight train, the 20-foot wall of muck and water rolled down the valley like a battering ram, snaking its way up one side of the hollow, then across to the other, washing away houses on one side and leaving others intact. Carrying the broken remains of Saunders, it rips through the neighboring town of Pardee, then Laredo and Lundale.
I was running with my baby to the mountain. I looked back and I could see houses with smoke coming out the chimney. They were just floating down.
The flood travels the 17 miles of the hollow in about 20 minutes, passing through the town of Man at the base of the lower valley and emptying into the Guyandotte River. 4,000 of the valley's 5,000 inhabitants are homeless, 125 are dead, and more than 1,000 injured.
You would walk around, you see people that was in, I mean, like they were here, but they wasn't here. I mean, they had a blank look.
There was people walking up onto the hill where we were at that was covered with mud, their clothes ripped off of them. I didn't recognize any of them.
I remember seeing one body that was laying on a straight stretch at Laredo that had completely ripped the clothes off of him. And it just looked like a mummy laying there.
3 young children are so badly battered they cannot be identified and are later buried in an anonymous grave.
I lost a lot of material things, but these people that lost a lot more than I did. I mean, I'm talking about family. That I mean, you can take and replace a lot of material things, but when somebody loses a loved one like that, you can't replace it.
More than 600 residents of Buffalo Creek Valley seek $64 million in a class action lawsuit. The coal company settles for $13.5 million. While it helps rebuild homes and property, it cannot rebuild shattered lives and communities. Many residents never return. Those that do find that more has changed than just the landscape. Like the villagers of Aberfan, the people of Buffalo Creek are strangers in a strange land.
People were as good as they could be to you, but when it come down to it, I mean, they only God could help you. I mean, there's an emptiness there that man can't feel.
The parents that had lost their children couldn't stand to see us playing in the streets then, because it reminded them of their children. And we didn't want to play games outside people's houses anymore.
We survived this disaster, but our child had stopped that day.